right now anyway.
Yeah.
We should be all ready to go.
All right, sounds good. So we will get started. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Nicole. I am the Green Crew Program Manager at Sustainable Claremont. And of course, Green Crew is our urban forestry program, excuse me. So as we were saying, everybody is muted right now. So if you have a question, you can go ahead and use the raise hand feature, or you can drop it in the chat box, and we will get to those at the end. So let's see, what else do we need to go over? Yeah, that's pretty much it. So this workshop was made possible by grant funding from California ReLeaf, CALFire, and California Climate Investments. As part of the grant we have with them, we planted about 130 trees last year, many of them in neighborhoods in Rancho Cucamonga. So of course, this workshop is open to everybody, and the information we cover will be useful for everybody. But we will go over a few things which specifically pertain to residents who received a tree, because of course, those trees that we planted, we want to make sure that they grow up big and strong, and that we equip the residents with the information to do that. So today's workshop will be led by Lucas Mitchell, who is a lead arborist for the City of Rancho Cucamonga. We worked with him for the past couple years, planting the trees. We've had a couple plantings with them in the City of Rancho Cucamonga. So today he is going to walk us through best practices for tree care and maintenance. Mostly watering is what we're going to cover, because of course, temperatures are increasing. So proper watering is super important. Of course, for young trees, it's even more important that we are properly watering them. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to Lucas.
Thank you, Nicole. All right. So as Nicole mentioned, we are doing just a really basic workshop on the importance of trees in an urban setting and some basic care. This was put together, a lot of it by Nicole, and she I felt did a really great job. And so we'll just really quickly here get started. Everybody could see my screen, right? Proper tree care workshop. And just here we go. Why trees? They provide us with shade for our homes, cars, sidewalks, cooler air by evaporating water from their leaves, pollution filtration, low heating and cooling costs, reduce watering costs by slowing rain so it can filter into the ground. And again, we could go on and on with reasons for the trees and their benefits, but these are just some of the basic topics that she and that we have touched on. They also are a great prevention for water pollution. It has been shown in many case studies that trees increase property values. So, I mean, I think that's pretty self-explanatory when you're driving down a street in a rural area or in a suburban setting, trees that cover the street and everything that are really shaded, they're much more desirable places to live in. Trees provide privacy and they muffle noise. Many studies have shown what a great mental health benefits trees do, whether they be out in the forest or in our urban settings, in parks, so on and so forth. Great mental health benefits. So great health benefits all around, both physical, mental, habitat and support for pollinators and other animals are just some of the benefits. Watering requirements. This is a big deal, especially for residents that are receiving new trees. And we have this challenge with parks and everywhere that we have street trees. Each tree has different watering needs. Watering requirements depend on many things. Four of the biggest things is the age of the tree, the soil types, the tree species, and of course, the weather conditions. There are many types of soils in Rancho Cucamonga, from the north, the south, east, and west of Rancho. Our soil types change drastically. We have sandy soil has good water filtration and drainage, but less retention. The retention of both nutrients and of moisture. Clay soil has poor infiltration and drainage, but high water retention. Unfortunately, it also has high retention in different types of bacteria, which can be harmful. Loam soils are in between sandy and clay. Sandy loam soil would be ideal for most trees. Rancho Cucamonga soil is a variety of all types depending on the area of the city, as I had just mentioned. When should we water? When should you water? Check the soil. It should contain moisture between the first 6 to 12 inches. Water to a depth of at least 18 inches to promote deep rooting. A soil probe can be helpful to measure watering depth. They can be found at home improvement stores. Not everybody is going to have that, but a moisture probe is very beneficial to help measure moisture depths. And then water before trees show signs of stress. So if you don't have a soil probe, one thing is to just, if it's in your yard, you can monitor it almost on a daily basis and see when it's, when it starts stressing out. When should you water? Water young trees more frequent. Uh-oh, this is in the way. Water young trees more frequently. They need 15 to 20 gallons per watering. Water mature established trees deeply, but less frequently. Best time to water is early morning or late evening. All good. Where and how should you water? Trees drink under the entire canopy, primarily at the drip line. Do not water at the base of the tree. So the canopy from end to end or all the way around a canopy, no matter what shape the canopy is, that's called our drip line. And in nature, the rain comes down, it hits the top of the tree and it all trickles down till it hits the ground. That's called the drip line. Most roots and most feeding roots are going to be around that drip line. Not always the case, but most of the time. Green gator bags allow for slow soaking of young trees. After a couple of years, remove your bag and water under the entire canopy, primarily, again, the drip line. Drip irrigation systems are great. Nicole just recently came up with this. I mean, I'm sure it's been used in the past, but I think this is just a great idea for individual residents who have trees in their yard, whether they're street trees or private trees, whatever they may be. But again, drip irrigation systems are great. If you water with a hose, it's best to do it slowly. Turn the hose on so the water is trickling out and move the hose periodically. With this method, mature trees may need an hour or more of watering. You can also drill holes in the buckets, fill the water, and place it at the drip line so they can drain slowly. I like this idea because you have a really good measurement of how much water you're putting out there. And, you have to run the hose anyway. So if you ran into a bucket and you left it out there, you can walk away and do your thing and not forget that the water's on, because believe me, that happens to me. Why should we avoid shallow watering? Watering with just sprinklers is not ideal since they typically do not provide adequate water. As true as that statement is, we want to encourage individual separate watering for turf than for trees, but sprinkler and turf water is still better than no water, especially if it's regular. But again, I'll say that one again, watering with just sprinklers is not ideal since they typically do not provide adequate water. Shallow watering promotes shallow root growth, and that can lead to hardscape damage, and as the picture shows, fallen trees during storms. Deep roots lead to lower watering requirements later. Mulch. The benefits of mulch. Mulch helps retain water and decreases evaporation. It helps the soil accumulate nutrients, suppresses weeds which compete with tree roots for water. Also looks a lot better. An ideal mulch is coarse wood chips. Avoid fine textured mulches. On that note, some of the store-bought mulches are based out of redwood, like gorilla hair or redwood bark chips. I would, even though those types of mulch are better than no mulch, they're not ideal mulches because they don't break down. Mulches that are more natural mulch that break down, they will provide a lot more nutrients to the soil and to whatever it is you're mulching, whether it be your garden or your trees or whatever that may be. Proper mulching. Around trees, apply a 6-inch deep layer of mulch. Over time, it will compact to about 2 to 4 inches. Keep mulch off of the tree's root crown. The tree needs to be able to breathe, and you want to provide root rot, i.e. don't apply a mulch volcano. So we want to try and keep the mulch away from the trunk, and for sure don't pile it up against the trunk, you know. For young trees, basic guidelines for watering trees. For young trees during cooler weather, water tree 1 time per week. Once temperatures reach the mid 80s, water twice a week. High 90s, tree may be watered 3 times per week. Again, this is a basic guideline that we've come up with. It doesn't apply to every soil type and every tree type and the location of your tree in your yard. So you're going to have to really watch the tree to dictate what water frequency you're going to need for your particular tree. For mature trees, water about once or twice a month, maybe more in extreme heat. Signs of drought stress: wilting or drooping leaves, curled or yellow leaves, leaves that lose luster and are grayish or bluish, lots of dropping leaves or even twigs, small leaves or stunted tree growth. So if the tree's not getting enough water, it's the tips of the leaves may start turning brown, or if it's so bad that the tree may start dropping its leaves to protect itself because it doesn't have enough water to keep those leaves cool. Excuse me. Tips. Remember, during periods of drought, always prioritize trees over grass and small plants. Trees provide us so many benefits other greenery does not. Trees also take decades to mature, while other greenery is easily replaced. Use captured water if you need to. Collect excess water from indoor use. Put a bucket in the shower while it warms up, or install drain barrels or a cistern to collect rainwater. There's so many ways to be creative with this. There's washer machine discharge. There's just so many ways and so many things I've seen. There's a lot of ways to be creative with all of that. If you have any questions, you contact Green Crew at Sustainable Claremont. All that's there, and they could be looked up, but they are just a great group to work with. I really enjoy working with them. They have a lot of information and are very helpful and very willing to share any information they have. So there we go.
All right, thank you, Lucas. Okay, so we just have, Mike, can you hear me? Yes. So we just have one question that somebody sent over. Lucas, if you could touch on the specific issues of watering coastline oaks, specifically older ones, and the certain pathogens which can kind of take over and reproduce with regular watering in the summer.
Okay, so that's kind of a loaded question, but most questions with trees are. So coast live oak, I would say probably don't even water. If you have any kind of surrounding irrigation for anything even near a coast live oak that's mature, I wouldn't water unless it started really stressing out, showing signs. One of the biggest things with coast live oak is you want to keep all the leaf litter, as much leaf litter as possible under the tree. These trees are constantly dropping leaves, even though they're evergreen, they're not deciduous. A really good thick organic layer under the coast live oak is very beneficial. It keeps the roots very cool. The sun off of them helps prevent sun scalding, and as all the other benefits mentioned about mulch under trees is the natural leaf litter from the coast live oaks. Anywhere that you go in these foothills and stuff, all of the most healthy of those trees have a really thick layer of organic material under them. So I would go with that. And again, unless it's way out in the field or something where there's absolutely no irrigation at all, I wouldn't water. Just water the surrounding under canopy that you have and anything around there, and they'll have plenty of water from that.
Okay, and then next question. Somebody said, how does this differ with bare root fruit trees if you are able to touch on watering specifications for them?
Well, you don't water bare root fruit trees. You got to put those in the ground.
I'm assuming they know.
But once those are in the ground, I would follow all the same preliminary that we suggested in this for young trees. And then fruit trees are going to be, they're trees just like an ornamental tree, and they're going to have the same basic requirements. They're going to be based on soil types, locations, all those other variables.
Okay. This is a very broad topic, so I don't know if we can even cover this right now. Somebody asked if you have any advice on general pruning practices.
Should be like any other tree.
But then why did they don't?
Katie, can you mute yourself, please?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
So on pruning practices, no, you're right. There's so many variables, including tree species, location, age of tree, and what you're trying to accomplish. You know, like there may be we have to trim for roadways often. A homeowner might have to trim for walkways. I would say just keep the trees light so that they're not so stressed that they're going to break. And there are a lot of websites. There's an ANSI, American National Standards Institute guideline called ANSI AZ 300. A300 ANSI. Well, it's for pruning, and those have some best management practices on there for guidelines for pruning. But again, there's like you said, Nicole, it's a loaded question. There's so many variables that there's not a simple answer for pruning.
Yeah, definitely. Also, Cindy, if you want to send me an email, which is up there, greencrew@sustainableclaremont, I can send you some information. We had a proper pruning workshop a couple years ago. So I can send you some information from that if you would like me to. So just send me an email. Okay, so next question. Should we paint tree trunks with white paint to prevent sunburn?
No. What happens is when you start putting paint on tree trunks, like latex types of paints and stuff, is it clogs cells in the tree trunk. Even though most of what we call transpiring, or the ability for trees to breathe basically, and to turn all of our pollution into oxygen, so on and so forth, that's called transpiring, and even the trunks transpire. So once you start doing that, you're cutting off gas and oxygen exchange that the tree needs to use for itself to transpire. So I would not recommend painting trunks for sunburn or sun scalding. One thing that can be done though on older trees is don't over prune. Over pruning is kind of like over watering. It can kill the tree quicker than if you don't prune it. So basically, no, don't paint the trunk, not even on a fresh cut. like they have that pruning stuff at Home Depot or whatnot to paint a prune cut. Don't do that. Studies have shown that they're better off to just heal naturally with proper cuts and not to paint the trunks.
Okay. So somebody asked if you have any special watering guidelines or recommendations for the Arbutus unido. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Strawberry tree. Yeah.
No, again, just the guidelines that we have provided today, and keep an eye on the tree, because again, there's so many variables. I could give you some guidelines, but you might have sandy soil, you might have loamy, you might have clay. You know, I don't know if it's on a slope or not. So follow the guidelines recommended per Sustainable Claremont and Green Crew.
Next question. If trees were not watered deeply initially, can roots still be trained to go deeply into the ground?
They could, but once you have your developed root crown, that's what you have. You can still train the smaller feeder roots to go deeper once the root crowns develop, but the hard roots that are on the surface or that you see closest to the trunk, those aren't going to change. Those are pretty much developed. And also keep in mind that even the biggest trees in the city or any city, they're not going to be deeper than 30 inches. So the roots need to stay somewhat close to the surface to use oxygen to exchange all the water that they get. And with the compaction zone laws and regulations for building within the city limits, it's very highly unlikely that the roots could even penetrate some of those compaction zones that are below 28 to 30 inches. I apologize that there's not a simple answer for this, but there never is with the trees, you know.
Yeah, everything's situational.
Yes.
Okay, next one. Where can you purchase the more natural mulch that you mentioned, Lucas?
Ooh, so there is a couple of websites online in which you can interact with local tree companies. That's iffy. Because you want to get good mulch, but a lot of tree companies want places to dump clean chips. And again, there's a couple websites. If you just even Google like got chips, there's going to be a number of websites that come up. That would be a really good starting place, or maybe even in the phone book or online looking for a reputable tree company that has a certified arborist, and tell them what you're looking for. And that would be a good place to go, because again, you're getting really good mulch, wood chips. There's going to be some leaf material involved with it. The leaves of the trees capture all of our pollution, and they have every nutrient, micronutrient that you can possibly buy in a fertilizer. And they're organic, it's not a synthetic. So that's really good. And then any type of the woody material that's going to be in those wood chips will help the mulching part. There's another place here in town that's called, gosh dang it, Nicole, maybe you can help me. What's the name of our it's called the Compost Authority. It has really good compost, but it's not a mulch, but it's 100% organic. And they sell the product at Home Depot, but if you look up the Composting Authority in Rancho Cucamonga, they have good compost, and that would be a good thing to subsidize with the mulch.
I know also the water conservation
Right.
district. I believe in both in Montclair and in Chino.
Chino Basin Water Conservation.
Yeah, I believe they both have mulch that you can pick up. I don't know if it's all the time or certain days of the month, but if you check on their websites, you can find more information about that.
Good point. And I believe that they have resources to find good mulch as well. That's a great point.
Okay, next one. Somebody said, I have a peach tree, which is about 5 years old. It gets peaches, but they never grow to a size that they can eat or use. Do you have any suggestions or inclination as to what may be the problem?
Yes, I would suggest when the peaches start developing, once they get to be about the size of, say, a grape or a little bit bigger than a grape, start spreading them out on the branches. So spread them out anywhere from 3 to 6 inches on the branches. That'll allow a lot more sugar to go to each peach, and it will also help prevent breakage of branches. And it's going to require maybe not less water, but it won't strive for as much water and nutrients. So space the peaches out as they start to develop and see how that goes. Fruit trees, sometimes it takes, even if it's a grafted tree, when installed, it could still take years before it produces fruit that's really good to eat. But it's a patience thing with fruit trees for sure.
Okay, thank you. Somebody said, what are the best practices for watering grass immediately around trees?
Don't have grass immediately around trees. But I mean, if you got a big mature tree and you want to have grass right up to the trunk, just broadcast like sprinklers. Just make sure that you don't have a lot of direct hit on the tree trunk from sprinklers. But soft spray around the trunk on turf isn't bad. Obviously, in a perfect world, the best thing would be not to have any grass under the drip line, but that's not very realistic when you're talking about someone's front yard or backyard.
Exactly. And then Stuart, did you have a question? Or no?
Yes, I do. Sorry, I'm feeding a child as we do.
No worries.
Yeah, so my question, Lucas, I have 2 questions, and maybe they're both quick questions. First is, can you tell us a little bit more about gator bags and like what they're used for, how they work, and when you recommend them? And then the second is with the mulch. I see a lot of people like in my neighborhood who have that kind of rubber mulch that you can get at Home Depot or Lowe's. And I know that the organic's the best, but have you used that, or do you have thoughts on that? And that's it.
Okay, so first off, Stuart, on the first question on the gator bags, we started using those about 4 or 5 years ago, and we only use them on newly planted trees. We usually have them for up to about between 1 year and 2 years. And again, it depends on the location and other variables such as, are there sprinklers available? Is there some kind of other irrigation? But even in the irrigated area, we try to put the gator bags on all newly planted trees. The gator bags work great because we can fill them up once a week, or maybe even sometimes once every 2 weeks. And the gator bag slowly dispenses water over the root crown. Now, as mentioned in our presentation, once the tree is mature, we don't want water next to the trunk. So once the tree gets to be about 2 years old, those feeding roots, we want those roots to grow out away from the trunk so they have some anchorage and some stability for the tree as it grows bigger. So we don't want to keep the gator bag too close for too long. But for newly planted trees, I think the gator bags are a great way to go, especially for us when we're doing so many plantings throughout the city, like in parks and street trees that are not in front of people's homes. We try to use those, as you know, Stuart and Nicole, because when we're doing our projects, we try to use those as much as we can where applicable. So that's my take on the gator bags. And on the mulch, I would never use that rubberized mulch. That's a petroleum product. It holds tons of heat, and it will never break down. They do break down somewhat, like in playgrounds and stuff where there's a lot of use, but around a tree, that stuff will never break down. It holds heat like nobody's business. And I think that it probably would do the opposite of holding moisture, because it gets so hot that it would make any type of moisture under it evaporate quicker than if there was nothing there. So I would steer away from petroleum type mulches.
I believe that is all the questions we had, unless Stuart, you spotted something that I did not see.
No, I
Yeah.
just went back through and I think we hit all the audience questions, Nicole.
Okay. So if anybody has any last questions, be sure to drop them in the chat right now. Or I think,
Well, thank you.
That
Thank
might
you,
be
everybody,
it.
for joining. That was really good. And Nicole, great job. And Stuart on putting together this little presentation of basics. I think you guys covered things really well on it and really clearly.
all right. And up there is our Instagram and our Facebook, which you can check out. We are always posting new events that we're holding, information, resources. You can also go to our website, really useful. You can sign up for our newsletter that we send out every month that has different events that are going on, not just with us, but in the region. Of course, you can reach out to me if you have any questions. Let me see, did somebody drop anything else?
We got some props and some great thank yous. So thank you to
All
them
right.
too.
I think that's it. Yeah. And then somebody asked, when does tree planting resume? We should hopefully begin tree planting again in the fall. So if you're able to come volunteer with us, we would love to have you.
All right.
All right. And I think that will be it. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. Have a
Thank
good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Lucas.
Thank you.
Nicole.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Nicole.
Thank you, Lucas. Have a good one.
You guys too.